The cigar smoke drifted slowly through the dark office in the Bronx. Arthur Flegenheimer, or Dutch Schultz as everyone on the streets knew him, watched the cars passing on the corner through a fogged window. Every headlight, every shadow represented a potential threat. Paranoia was not weakness in the underworld, it was survival. During the Prohibition years, Dutch had been a prodigy. While other gangsters fought over territory, he saw opportunities where no one else did. He started by hauling whiskey in beat-up trucks, but his calculating mind soon turned that into an empire. Clandestine breweries, speakeasies, the numbers racket, everything passed through his hands. The Jewish kid from the Bronx had become one of the richest and most dangerous men in New York. "Boss, Luciano sent word," said Bo Weinberg, his right-hand man, entering the room cautiously. Everyone had learned to measure their words around Dutch. His temper was a ticking time bomb. Dutch spun around abruptly. His bloodshot eyes did not blink. "What word?" "He says you're drawing too much attention. Prosecutor Dewey is coming down on all of us because of you." Dutch's fist smashed the crystal ashtray against the table. Shards flew across the room. "Luciano thinks he can tell me how to run my business? I built this. Every cent, every drop of blood was mine." But Bo knew the truth no one dared to say aloud. Dutch was losing control. The brilliance that had made him rich was now turning into suicidal recklessness. He executed people over imagined slights. He personally tortured debtors. Worst of all, he was obsessed with assassinating Thomas Dewey, the special prosecutor investigating his operations. "Killing a federal prosecutor is madness," Bo dared to whisper. "The commission will never allow it." Dutch laughed, that icy laugh that made even hardened veterans shudder. The commission? Lucky Luciano and his suit-wearing friends? They've forgotten where we came from. The streets, Bo. The streets where you either kill or you die. But the streets had changed. Organized crime was becoming more sophisticated, more corporate. Men like Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, and Frank Costello understood that unnecessary violence attracted federal heat. Dutch, however, remained trapped in the old ways: brutality, intimidation, absolute fear. Even his own men began whispering in corners. Bo noticed the exchanged glances, the conversations that stopped when Dutch walked in. The empire he had built with cunning was crumbling because of his unchecked paranoia. On the night of October 23, 1935, Dutch walked into the Palace Chop House in Newark. He didn't know it, but it would be his last meal. The commission had decided. Men like Dutch Schultz no longer had a place in the new world of organized crime. He was too powerful to be left alive and too insane to be trusted. When the gunshots echoed through the restaurant, Dutch understood too late. In the underworld, the greatest danger never comes from the enemies you can see, but from the allies you underestimate. The hotel ballroom was thick with smoke and tension. 24 men, the most powerful crime bosses in America, sat around tables covered with white tablecloths, like executives at a corporate convention. But these were no ordinary businessmen. Each one ruled territories soaked in blood, fortunes built on extortion, gambling, and bootlegging. Charles Lucky Luciano surveyed them all with his piercing eyes. At 38, he had achieved the impossible, uniting rival families under a single structure. The commission, as they called it, was not merely a revolutionary idea, it was the evolution of the mafia. "Gentlemen," his voice cut through the low murmur of conversation, "we are here because the old world is dying, and Dutch Schultz is proof of that." Meyer Lansky, the financial genius at Lucky's side, lit a cigarette and added, "Dutch wants to kill Thomas Dewey, a federal prosecutor. Do you understand what that means? Total war with the government, the FBI, the tax authorities, the police, all coming down on us." Frank Costello, ever the diplomat, shook his head. "In the past, we solved everything with bullets, but Lucky showed us another way,
Business, not battles. That was Luciano's brilliance. While the old guard, Messeria, Maranzano, and now Dutch, believed power came from fear and uncontrolled violence, Lucky saw crime as a business. Territory was not won through endless wars, but through strategic agreements. Disputes were not settled with public massacres, but with votes from the commission. Dutch is brilliant, no one denies that, Lucky said, slowly walking between the tables. He turned the illegal lottery into a money machine, but he's blinded by paranoia, torture, senseless executions, public scandals. He draws spotlights when we should be operating in the shadows. Albert Anastasia, known as the Lord High Executioner, folded his arms. So what are you proposing, Lucky? Dutch has an army.
He won't take orders. I'm not proposing orders, Lucky replied coldly. I'm proposing survival. Ours and the businesses. Dutch represents everything that was wrong with the old mafia. Ego, impulsiveness, and spectacular violence. We represent the future. Structure, discretion, sustainable profit. Vito Genovese, always eager for blood, leaned forward. You want us to vote for his death. Silence weighed heavily over the room. Killing one of their own was no small matter, but Lucky had learned a crucial lesson when he eliminated the old Dons Masseria and Maranzano. Sometimes cutting off the rotten head saved the entire body. Dutch will kill Dewey with or without our permission, Lucky said firmly, and when he does, the government will come down on all of us like an avalanche. Do you want to protect one man or protect our families, our businesses, our future? Meyer handed out folded slips of paper. Vote. Democracy, gentlemen. That's how the new world works. One by one, the bosses marked their votes. When Meyer opened the last slip, the outcome was clear. Dutch Schultz was condemned. Lucky nodded to Anastasia. Quick and discreet. No public massacre. As the men drifted into the night, Meyer whispered to Lucky, "You've just rewritten the rules, Charlie." Lucky lit a cigarette, gazing at the city lights. "No, Meyer. I simply buried the old rules along with the dinosaurs who insisted on following them. The modern mafia had been born, and there was no room for chaos." The conference room at the Claridge Hotel in Atlantic City was charged with a tension that made even seasoned veterans adjust their vests beneath their jackets. Dutch Schultz had been summoned. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons from the commission. Lucky Luciano arrived precisely on time, flanked by Meyer Lansky and Frank Costello. His footsteps echoed on the marble as he crossed the lobby. He knew that meeting would define the future of them all. Dutch was out of control, and men out of control were bad for business. "Where is he?" Lucky asked the guard at the door. "He's already inside, boss, and he's not in a good mood." Lucky exchanged a glance with Meyer. That was not a good sign. A good-humored Dutch Schultz was already unpredictable. A bad-tempered one was lit dynamite. When he opened a door, he found Dutch standing by the window, staring out at the boardwalk. He didn't turn around. His body was tense, shoulders hunched like a cornered animal. Bo Weinberg stood in the corner, visibly uncomfortable. "Dutch," Lucky began in a calm voice, trying to set a civilized tone. "We need to talk about Dewey." Dutch spun round sharply. His eyes were red, bloodshot, maybe from drink, maybe from sleeplessness, probably both. "Talk? You called me here to talk?" He spat the word like poison. "You want to tell me how to run my own territory?" "No one is saying that," Frank Costello cut in diplomatically. "But killing a federal prosecutor, it's necessary," Dutch exploded, slamming his fist on the table. Whiskey glasses rattled. "Dewey is tearing my empire apart piece by piece. He bribes my witnesses, freezes my accounts, arrests my men, and you want me to sit back and watch?" Lucky took a step forward, keeping his hands visible, open. "Dutch, listen, we all have problems with the law, but there are ways to deal with this. Bribery, political pressure, expensive lawyers." "Lawyers," Dutch laughed with contempt. "You've gone soft, Lucky, all of you, sitting in your fancy clubs, drinking French champagne, pretending you're legitimate businessmen." He paced in circles like a caged animal. I came up from the streets. You came up from the streets. Remember when we solved problems the right way? With lead. The world has changed, Dutch, Meyer said softly. Spectacular violence draws attention we can't— Attention? Attention? Dutch's voice jumped an octave. He shoved a hand inside his jacket. In an instant, everyone in the room froze. Bo Weinberg instinctively reached inside his coat. Lucky's bodyguard stepped forward. Meyer backed away behind his chair. But Dutch's weapon appeared first, a silver .45 reflecting the chandelier's light. He didn't point it directly at Lucky, but the threat was clear. The barrel wavered dangerously as Dutch gestured. "You think you can control me?" Dutch snarled, his knuckles white as he gripped the handle. "You think you get to decide what I can and can't do? I built my empire when you were still counting nickels." Lucky didn't move. His eyes locked on Dutch, calculating, measuring. He had faced gun barrels before, but never one held by one of his own bosses. Never at a commission meeting. "Put the gun away, Dutch," Lucky said in a dangerously low voice. "You don't want to do this." "Don't tell me what I want." Dutch shook the gun. "I'm going to kill Dewey, with or without your blessing, and when he does, the government will come down on all of us like an avalanche. Do you want to protect one man or protect our families, our businesses, our future?" Meyer handed out folded slips of paper. "Vote. Democracy, gentlemen. That's how the new world works." One by one, the bosses marked their votes. When Meyer opened the last slip, the outcome was clear. Dutch Schultz was condemned. Lucky nodded to Anastasia. Quick and discreet, no public massacre. As the men drifted into the night, Meyer whispered to Lucky, "You've just rewritten the rules, Charlie." Lucky lit a cigarette, gazing at the city lights. "No, Meyer. I simply buried the old rules along with the dinosaurs who insisted on following them. The modern mafia had been born, and there was no room for chaos."
Dutch, think about what you're doing. Pulling a gun on another boss at a commission meeting? That was when Dutch seemed to realize where he was, what he had done. His eyes swept the room, the shocked faces, the hands inside jackets, the line he had just crossed. Slowly, he holstered the weapon, but the damage was done. "This meeting is over," Dutch muttered, storming out the door with Bo hurrying after him. When the door slammed shut, Frank Costello whispered, "He just signed his own death warrant." Lucky lit a cigarette with steady hands. Yes, he did. Night fell over Manhattan like a funeral shroud. On the third floor of an unremarkable warehouse on the Lower East Side, powerful men arrived one by one, using different entrances, unmarked cars. No one could know that this meeting was taking place. What would be decided there would change the rules of the underworld forever. Lucky Luciano was the last to enter. Meyer Lansky was already seated at the head of the long table, papers and ashtrays scattered before him. Frank Costello was speaking in low tones with Joe Adonis. Vito Genovese was filing his nails with a switchblade, his favorite pastime when anticipating bloodshed. Albert Anastasia, the commission's official executioner, stood against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "We're all here," Lucky announced, personally locking the door. "No one comes in, no one leaves until we decide." The gravity in his voice made even Vito put the knife away. Meyer opened a black briefcase. "Gentlemen, we're here because of Arthur Flegenheimer, Dutch Schultz." He paused, letting the name linger in the smoke-heavy air. "In recent weeks, he has crossed lines that should never be crossed." "He pulled a gun on you, Lucky," Joe Adonis said, shaking his head. "At a commission meeting. That's betrayal, no matter how you look at it." Frank Costello lit a Cuban cigar. "That's not all. Dutch is obsessed with killing Thomas Dewey, a special prosecutor appointed by the governor. Do you understand the magnitude of that? If Dutch kills Dewey," Meyer continued methodically, "the full weight of the federal government will come down on us. J. Edgar Hoover will turn it into a personal crusade. We'll have federal agents investigating every family, every business, every dollar we earn." Vito Genovese leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Then we eliminate the problem. Simple." "It's not simple," Lucky snapped. "We're talking about executing one of our own bosses, one of the founders of our operations. That sets a precedent." The precedent was already set. Albert Anastasia spoke for the first time, his deep voice echoing through the room. When he pulled that gun, when he disrespected the authority of the commission, when he decided his personal vendettas mattered more than the survival of all of us. The silence that followed was absolute. Everyone knew Anastasia was right. Meyer handed out blank sheets of paper and pens. "Let's do this the right way, democratically, the way we've always done it since we formed the commission. Every man votes, yes or no, life or death, and each of us will carry the weight of that decision for eternity." Frank Costello was the first to take the pen. His hand hesitated over the paper. He had known Dutch for 15 years. They had shared bottles of bootleg whiskey, laughed at dirty jokes in speakeasies. But business was business. He marked his vote and folded the paper. One by one, the bosses wrote. Some quickly, decisively, others slowly, thoughtfully. Vito nearly tore the paper by pressing the pen so hard. His vote was obvious. Meyer collected the folded slips into an old top hat, a macabre irony as fate was drawn by lot. With steady fingers, he opened each one. Yes. Another folded slip. Yes. Another. Yes. The pattern repeated itself. When Meyer opened the final vote, he looked at Lucky and nodded. "Unanimous," Lucky announced to the room. Dutch Schultz violated the code. He placed personal ambition above the family. He endangered the survival of all of us with his recklessness. The commission decides Arthur Flegenheimer must die. He turned to Albert Anastasia. "You have full authority. Choose your best men. Do it fast, clean, and final. And make sure the message is clear. No one is above the commission, not even those who helped create it." Anastasia nodded. "When?" "Soon," Meyer replied, "before he kills Dewey and buries all of us along with him." Lucky walked to the window, watching the city lights he had helped control from the shadows. Dutch forgot the most important lesson. In our world, you can be powerful, you can be rich, you can even be feared. But the moment you become a greater threat to your own than to your enemies. He let the sentence trail off. It didn't need finishing. Frank Costello stubbed out his cigar. "May God have mercy on his soul. God has nothing to do with this. This is underworld justice."
And in the darkness of that room, men who ruled criminal empires sealed the fate of one of their own. Not with anger, not with hatred, but with the cold logic of those who understand that survival demands impossible sacrifices. Dutch Schultz was dead. He just didn't know it yet. Newark, New Jersey, October 23, 1935, 10:35 p.m. A light rain drummed against the windows of the Palace Chop House, an unassuming restaurant Dutch Schultz used as a refuge. He liked it there, far from Manhattan, far from prying eyes, far from the constant pressure of Dewey and his federal investigators. There, Dutch could be Arthur Flegenheimer again, a man enjoying a quiet dinner. But peace was an illusion men like him could never afford. At a table in the back, Dutch reviewed financial papers while chewing on a rare steak. Lulu Rosenkrantz and Abe Landau, his most loyal bodyguards, played cards at a nearby table. Otto Abadaba Berman, his brilliant accountant, scribbled numbers into a notebook, always calculating, always finding ways to hide money from the government. "Boss," Lulu said, glancing out the window, "I don't like this place. It's too quiet." Dutch didn't even look up. "You don't like any place, Lulu. Relax." At that exact moment, two men entered through the back door. Charlie the Bug Workman, and Emmanuel Mendy Weiss, the best hitters Albert Anastasia had. They had waited 8 days for this opportunity, 8 days tracking Dutch, studying his movements, waiting for the perfect moment. This was the moment. Charlie entered the dining room first, his overcoat concealing a Thompson submachine gun. Mendy followed close behind with two .38 specials. There was no warning, no words, only deafening explosions that turned the quiet restaurant into a slaughterhouse. Lulu jumped to his feet, reaching for his weapon, but Mendy's bullets struck him in the chest before he could draw. He collapsed onto the card table, blood mixing with the playing cards. Abe Landau managed to fire 2 shots before being cut down by Charlie Thompson. His body spun violently, slamming into the wall and leaving a red streak across the floral wallpaper. Abadabba never had a chance. The bullets hit him while he was still seated, pen still in hand, numbers still being calculated as life drained from his eyes. Charlie ran to the back, where the bathroom was. He knew Dutch was there. They had studied his habits. The boss always went to the restroom during dinner, a routine that would now prove fatal. Dutch was at the urinal when he heard the gunfire. Instinctively, he reached for the gun in his holster, but Charlie was already inside, the Thompson spewing fire. 2 bullets tore into Dutch's abdomen, 1 into his side. He dropped to his knees, the gun slipping from his hands. "Message from the commission," Charlie said coldly, before running out. Minutes later, police and ambulances arrived. The Palace Chop House looked like a war zone. Blood on the walls, overturned tables, bodies strewn across the floor. But Dutch was still alive, unconscious, breathing in ragged gasps. At Newark City Hospital, doctors worked frantically. The wounds were severe but not immediately fatal. Dutch drifted between consciousness and delirium, fever consuming his mind. A police stenographer was called in to record anything Dutch might say. What came out of his mouth over the next 24 hours would go down in history as one of the most bizarre and confusing monologues in organized crime. "A girl. My girl. She sits at Teddy's bar," Dutch murmured, eyes rolling back. "Mother is the best bet. French harmony? I don't need it. Oh, mother, mother." The detective tried to question him. "Who shot you, Dutch? Give us names." But Dutch was far away, lost in fever and hallucinations. No. The diamonds. Where are the diamonds? I want to pay. Let me pay. The boss doesn't need so many expensive toys." Disconnected words, fragmented memories, secrets tangled with delusions. Nothing useful for the police, but everything reporters needed to turn his final words into urban legend. On October 24th at 8:35 p.m., Dutch Schultz died without ever fully regaining consciousness. His eyes closed for the last time, taking with them the secrets of hidden fortunes, unavenged betrayals, and perhaps the location of millions in buried cash that would never be found. Only 12 people attended the funeral. No members of the commission, no powerful allies, just distant relatives and onlookers. The mob had delivered its clearest message yet. Betrayal would not be forgiven. Disrespect would not be tolerated. Lucky Luciano read about the death in the newspapers while having breakfast at the Waldorf Astoria. Meyer sat beside him. "It's over," Meyer said simply. "No," Lucky replied, folding the paper. "Now it begins." Dutch represented the old world, chaotic, violent, unpredictable. We represent the new, structured, strategic, sustainable. And he was right.
The death of Dutch Schultz marked the end of an era. The days of impulsive bosses, public shootouts, and personal vendettas above collective interests were over. The commission had proven itself more powerful than any individual, that no man, no matter how rich, feared, or connected, stood above the rules. American organized crime would never be the same again. And in the shadows of Newark, the ghost of Dutch Schultz served as an eternal reminder. In the underworld, you can build empires, but cross certain lines, and those very empires become your grave.